2024, Sewer Authority, Midcoastside. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Clark.
Present.
Director Penrose.
Here.
Director Boyd. Here. Director Roddick.
Here.
Director Decker.
Here.
Chair Dye.
Here. Right. Public comment, oral communications for items not on the agenda. Do we have anyone who'd like to speak? Seeing no one, we will move on to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda? We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? So I guess we need a roll call on that. Yes.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Penrose.
Aye.
Director Boyd. Aye. Director Roddick.
Aye.
Director Decker.
Aye.
Chair Dye.
Aye. Right. Moving on to the regular agenda. First item is recognition for CSRMA Workers' Compensation Excellence Award. Christian, can you tell us about that?
Yes. First of all, CSRMA is California Sanitation Risk Management Authority. Now, I'm proud that my staff has again got the Workers' Compensation Excellence Award. We had actually applied for it 2 years back. We got it then. We did not apply last year, but we're not allowed to apply every year. That's why we had to give a gap. And then we applied this year and we got it. And this is one of the best awards that one can get for safety management and injury prevention. Now, the basic qualification to apply for this award is that we should not have had any low back lost time claims. So that was one of the pre-qualification. So we did that, and then we proved we had a lot of evidence that we have a lot of good standard operating procedures, training programs in place, which will prevent any injuries and keep the safety in a good place. So what we've got from CSRMA is a plaque and a banner. We've already put up the banner for those of you who noticed it as you came in. And this inside, that's the other room. And besides that, we would also be getting a Visa gift card for each one of the employees. And the previous year, the last time when we got it, we got about $275 per person.
Wow.
Which staff can use anywhere with personalized gift card to each one of them. So I'm proud to say that, and here to answer any questions.
Good job. Good job. Congratulations.
Yes, well done.
Are you having the crew do core strengthening exercises?
Yeah. That's true.
I read through all the requirements, and they were considerable. You had to do a lot of spelling out of the way you're dealing with things. You had to do a lot of specific trainings and so forth.
Yes, we had to identify risks, high risks, and for each of the high risks, we had to come out with ways by means we could reduce the risk. We actually had to develop almost a 120-page document, which we had to submit.
Looked pretty extensive of what you had to do. And did you really feel as if all of the things that they asked you to do helped make this a safer place?
Oh, yes, definitely. It was useful. And we got a lot of standard operating procedures put in place, which everybody had it in their head, but we wanted everything to be documented.
That's great.
Those are important. Those were very important. And the whole of California, there were only 4 establishments which got this award. 2 of them are in Southern California and 2 out here in the Bay Area. The other one in the Bay Area is Castro Valley.
Excellent. Well, congratulations from all of us as well. Yes.
Good job.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Receive and file a report from Integral Consulting on hydrodynamic flood modeling studies. Very interesting report.
Okay. We do have our consultant, Integral consultant, who would be presenting his findings on a PowerPoint, but we also have public comment from Jimmy Benjamin. He actually emailed it to me, but since he's present, we can give him an opportunity to speak either before the presentation or after the presentation. Whatever is.
It's fine. Okay, let's do that. I know that you're very helpful.
Thank you.
Lots of research and background on all of this, but so we're going to hear a presentation.
Yes. Great. Okay, David. Given you control, you can go ahead and start your PowerPoint.
Okay.
Hopefully everybody can see my screen now. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to do this study. It was quite interesting, and try and make it full screen here. Okay. And we started this in late 2022, and we have now completed this, and would love to share the results and talk about some next steps. I wanted to sort of acknowledge some of my team members. Sam McWilliams is also on the phone, who can help answer any of the really technical questions. Matt Jamieson, Tim Nelson, a bunch of other folks here at Integral. Gushen was really great. Tim Costello was really great in helping provide information and experiential knowledge. Jimmy Benjamin was great. He gave us some pieces and perspectives that we didn't necessarily have. So it was, and Moz weighed in as well. So there was a good group effort on here to make sure that we got this right. And along the way, we've done quite a bit of check-ins with you guys just to kind of give you some status updates. So here's the results, a little bit of background. Obviously, this started with kind of a Brittany Cozzolino, who was at the City of Half Moon Bay, did a screening study for her master's and used a USGS model that's meant for really screening level statewide approaches, and found a lot of potential, issues with this site. There's no FEMA flood insurance rate map right now in Pilarcitos Creek for this section of the creek. You guys have experienced historic flooding, and the concern about sea level rise and adaptation planning really sort of led to this project. Our scope of work was really to develop a conceptual and numerical modeling of this coastal confluence or compound flooding. We looked at a bunch of flooding response scenarios to different flows in Pilarcitos Creek and different wave events. When I talk about compound flooding or coastal confluence, it's the combination of fluvial watershed flooding or processes coupled with ocean processes. And that can make the flood profile change a lot over time. Then we looked at some different adaptation strategies. And as every project moves along, there's always a twist and a turn. Besides a few flooding events on the facility during the study, there was also a need to really support the sewer authority with going after some FEMA funds. And so we were able to change our scope without too much extra effort and provide some real good technical sound information to support a FEMA grant. So I'm going to talk briefly about the model approach and calibration, but then really get into what the vulnerabilities we found and what the results of the adaptation were, and then finish with some next steps, and happy to open up for discussion after that. So our conceptual site model that we started with was, can people see my cursor moving?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we have Pilarcitos coming down. We have a gauge just below Highway 1 bridge. So we know that there's some issues with impoundment up above by Highway 1. That's not really factored into this. It's just what's recorded downstream. We have considered the Keehill watercourse inputs and the vegetation in here, vegetation in the floodplain. We have also incorporated the Caltrans wetland restoration project. But over time, so these are all sort of flood sources. As this goes down, we see that the outlet of the Pilarcitos Lagoon and outlet channel migrates seasonally based on sand transport and wave conditions and beach conditions. When it runs all the way up to Frenchman's Creek, there's potential beach seepage that can actually match summer discharge levels. So in the summertime, we'll have 3 to 5 cubic feet per second flows. That's easily maintained by seepage through this long beach berm. And so there's not a lot of lagoon habitat that's really good for, say, steelhead, trout. Over time, so this beach and this outlet is really controlled by wave swash, wave run up, overtopping, big wave events, which we've also had quite a few of in the last few years. And over time with sea level rise, the dunes that are sort of protecting the infrastructure here and are and have set up this sort of migratory channel path are anticipated to erode. When that erodes, then this location of the outlet channel is much less likely to be to the north and much more likely to be in front of the facility, where the combination of coastal processes, wave run up, high tides, king tides, storm impacts, will interact with the flooding on the creeks and create a compound flood hazard. There's also an outfall infrastructure sort of clean out right here that is also sort of in the way, potentially. So we developed a fluvial model, which is to mimic the Pilarcitos Creek flooding, and that included Kehoe and Pilarcitos Creek. We used USGS data and sort of looked at a bunch of recurrence intervals. On December 31st of 2022, there was flooding at the plant. And we went back to the return period of flow records and determined it was a 37-year event. And so that became a very good calibration event for us to model water depths at the plant and things like that as we developed the numerical model. So moving forward, we also calculated a 100-year and a 500-year storm event based on the collected flow data from the USGS gauge. And then we calibrated the model with roughness from vegetation data and things like that.
I'm sorry, what does that mean? Roughness from vegetation data?
So that's a great question. And sorry, that's a little bit of engineering nerd speak here. But when you have a natural waterway that has vegetation in it, on a floodplain, it really slows the flows. And that can cause a little bit of piling up of the water on the floodplain. And it's really good for absorbing some of the flood water and reducing a lot of flood damages downstream. But as opposed to, say, a concrete line channel where there's no friction or restriction on the water and it just is conveyed as fast as possible out to sea.
Thank you.
Okay, good question. So we had this, for better or for worse, we had an event happen during the course of the study that we were able to calibrate this model very accurately. And so this is a reenactment in modeling space of what happened during that flood. And you can see at some point it kind of overtops the berm and starts to flood down here. And when we looked at the flood depths from the model and the flood depths that were measured at the facility following the flood, we were really comfortable with the accuracy of the modeling for existing conditions. And as we go forward in time, obviously, we don't entirely know what's going to happen in the future with precipitation intensities and future floods. But if we can develop a model that recreates existing and historic conditions, we have a lot of confidence applying it into the future. So that was the watershed or the stream model. And we developed two different coastal models. One looked at dune erosion and beach migration, and one looked at storm impacts. And for the storm impacts, we used that January 5th, 2023 storm because we had really good wave buoy data, tide data, and had a really good understanding of wave run up because after the event we were down and were able to observe where drift logs deposited on the top of the dunes. So we had elevation information about how high wave run up was and the wave forces. So again, for better or for worse, we had a really good calibration event in the middle of this study. During that January 5th storm, San Francisco buoy was 59 feet at 16 seconds, which is huge. And it resulted in about the wave run up from that resulted in about 10 feet of additional water on top of a 7-foot high king tide. So using this information from a major wave event, we then added sea level rise to that and then looked at a combination. And so what you see here is sort of normal tides. This is water levels that were recorded during this storm event and what wave run up and this wave setup, which is caused when lots of waves pile onto the coast and set up waves much higher than is predicted by tides and waves alone. And so we had good measurements and we're able to calibrate this model. Then we applied, then we looked at what sea level rise over time would cause in terms of dune erosion using sort of a modified. Bruin is very geekish for the type of model that we applied. But what we did is, for a storm event, we could anticipate, and this is a profile, right? A beach profile where the ocean is over here and the plant is over here. And this is where the current alignment of Pilarcitos channel is. And so we looked at it for existing conditions 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we're likely to get close to capturing the channel and eroding through the dunes that are fronting that channel. And so we used the model and we had, I think, 12 different transects along the coast. And we modeled this dune erosion for each 1 foot of sea level rise. And then we identified that this whole channel alignment here and the dunes that are in here, this is topography or elevation information, that with 4 feet of sea level rise, the channel in here, these dunes would erode and waves and coastal processes could interact with the channel flows with 4 feet of sea level rise, which could occur between 2080 and 2120 for a time period. But at that point, we had a compound flood or coastal confluence risk. So we took this 4 feet of sea level rise and we evolved the digital elevation model and then ran our flood model with those coastal processes that I had just talked about to see how the interaction of waves breaking and flow coming down could affect the plant. What we found is that with 2 feet of sea level rise, this outfall pipe infrastructure, which is like a vent and a potential clean out, 2 feet of dune erosion impacts could impact this sort of maintenance location. So that's something we're going to have to monitor into the future. And then 4 feet changes the mouth location. So with that information, then we looked at different adaptation strategies. And we kind of took a very high-level approach to start with, looking at let's protect the facility. And that included elevating the existing earthen berms that surround the facility. We could accommodate looking at potentially elevating critical components like the electrical room, looking at vegetation management on Pilarcitos and on Kehoe watercourse, or expanding the adjacent Caltrans wetland. And then finally relocating or retreating the facility or critical aspects of the facility. So we looked at the best available sort of remote sensing elevations of the berms. And I wanted to point out that during the 2022 flood event, this is the area that was overtopped. And you can see some lower pieces in here. And this is the area that also had some emergency repairs and are represented in this red line and this elevation. So when we looked at increasing the berm elevation, we compared it to a 100-year event, which is sort of the FEMA standard for flooding. A 1% annual chance storm, which could happen, has a 1% chance of occurring in any given year. We found that the the adaptation strategy of increasing the berm elevation by 3 feet, which was similar to the emergency repair that was done immediately after that December 31st, 2022 flood event, was capable of eliminating flooding in the facility. So the elevation of the emergency repair appears suitable for withstanding a 100-year flood event today.
Does that include the additional work you just did?
I'm sorry, say that again?
I have a question. Christian, does that include the additional work, or is this, it sounds like this is just the work that was done during the storm? But the work that you just did, is that the level? That's the level they're talking to, the work you just did. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Trying to be clear.
Yeah, that picture with the yellow paint is what we did recently. That's
okay.
What he's got.
So this increased berm elevation by 3 feet is what has been done now?
Yes. In the low-lying area shown in this white line or in this red line. That's not the full extent, but around the area where the flood waters entered the facility. And so that 3 feet elevation appears suitable for handling a current 100-year flood event on Pilarcitos Creek. Because of the flood event and because of the FEMA grant application to look at potential relocation and getting funds for additional adaptation and disaster preparedness planning, we did run a 500-year discharge event. And this is what it looks like under the pre-emergency repair. And you can see substantial flooding across the plant, particularly in the sort of the western, the sort of northwest portion of the facility. When we add that with sea level rise and the coastal influence, we see that a berm crest elevation around the plant of 27 feet is suitable to protecting a 500-year flood event and 4 feet of sea level rise. So that combination for an adaptation approach seems pretty robust. There was a lot more modeling that went on that's covered in detail in the report. I'm not going to go into all of it because that would get long and tedious. But I did want to share some of the results, and that the observed flooding that occurred in December of 2022 had minimal impact from coastal processes. So right now, the flood risk at the facility is based on creek flows and not from anything that the waves and tides and ocean is doing. The post-flood repairs provide flood protection currently for a 1% annual chance discharge. We do need to start, when we think about sea level rise, we need to think about the dune erosion in the future. With less than 2 feet of sea level rise, that outfall, it's not a pump station. That's sorry about that, but that's like a vent that is important for the outfall to function. And that is, that could be impacted from dune erosion and wave flooding. The dune erosion from less than 4 feet of sea level rise can relocate Pilarcitos Creek outlet that will then change the compound flood risk. And so adaptation path, something in addition to the current measures will be required in the future. Adaptation, the berm increases to 26, it's actually 27 feet. I'm sorry. It was FEMA. We were very precise. We had a 26.4 feet. FEMA standards and regulations say round to the nearest foot up, not down. So this was a down, not an up. So I will correct that before I send over this final presentation. So 27 feet can protect 4 feet of sea level rise and a 500-year event. Elevating the critical facility components by 6+ feet, particularly the electrical building, or relocating it to an on-site location to be determined is really probably the best long-term plan. When we looked at the vegetation management, both in Pillarcitos and on Kehoe Watercourse, which comes with a whole bunch of regulatory permitting and endangered species complications and challenges, did not seem to be that helpful. In addition, we looked at an expansion of the Caltrans wetland just upstream of about an acre and found that stormwater storage capacity also did not reduce the flood risk at the facility. So for next steps, we sort of outlined a series of sort of monitoring needs for groundwater, looking at a logbook of observations, things that could be integrated into daily maintenance practices or post-storm observations and documentation, and some beach condition monitoring that will allow us to see when things are changing over time and when it may be time to really sort of look at some of the other adaptation strategies. An actual elevation survey and geotechnical evaluation of the berm surrounding the facility, because it varies differently and there are different widths and there's a lot of vegetation concerns. And that's probably a high priority recommendation, is that we get a good understanding of those. And then there is work within the city of Half Moon Bay on looking at Caltrans wetland modification, stormwater management in the area, and some FEMA insurance classifications. The same facility staff should definitely stay attuned and involved in those discussions. And then looking at more cost estimation of these adaptation strategies to support planning efforts, including maybe relocation of some of the electrical infrastructure, and or looking at those, getting to more specific levels of engineering design for that relocation and berm elevation. And so with that, I am going to leave my contact here. That'll give you details and stuff if you're interested, but that sort of concludes my formal presentation, and happy to address any questions.
Well, let's start with board questions and comments. Public first, Jimmy.
Sure. So good evening, board members. David, nice to meet you all again. My name is Jimmy Benjamin. I live at 400 Pillarcitos Avenue. I am Sam's nearest neighbor, just at the end of Pillarcitos Avenue. So I really appreciate the interest Sam has in being safe, because if they're safe, we're safe, and if we're safe, they're safe. And I appreciated the expertise that showed up in David's report. It was eye-opening, and I'm very impressed with the intellectual horsepower that went into this study. That said, I had a few tiny bones to pick, and I wanted to get them in the record, because in reading the report, I thought there were a couple of items that probably ought to be clear, that if someone reading the report months or years from now thought these things hadn't been addressed, it might confuse them and lead to something difficult. First, I appreciate the comments about veg management on the Kehoe watercourse. It is true that there is a riparian corridor and Habitat for California red-legged frog in San Francisco garter snake in that area. Those are all protected under federal and state laws that protect listed species, as well as the Coastal Act and our local coastal program. In addition to those concerns, that area has extremely friable, very erodible soils. And when vegetation is removed from that area and water expedites because of the smoother channel, it creates an erosion problem. Unfortunately, that happened in 2009 in an area upstream from the city. And there are, as far as I know, undisputed surveys that reflect changes in the channel that have happened in the blink of an eye from 2005 to 22, before that big storm, where the channel went from about 20 feet bank to bank to over 30 feet. in that area. So it's quite alarming. That's a blink of an eye in geologic terms. So we definitely are concerned about the loss of vegetation because of erosion issues as well as habitat related issues. When I had the chance to speak with David and his colleagues at Integral about this project earlier in the year, we talked about the watershed that feeds into the Kehoe watercourse. And I'm sure David will recall my describing the area of the Grandview Terrace neighborhood, which Tim is very familiar with because he lives there. And the fact that it breached the watershed boundary and brought water from a watershed north into the Kehoe watercourse. The estimates of watershed area reflected in this report, I think, were inherited from the Shappenweiler 2015 study. And when David saw the numbers, he said, oh, maybe we should increase that from 2% to 4%. In addition, the 1978 storm drainage report observes that the area north of the Seahaven neighborhood also drains into the Kehoe watercourse. That wasn't reflected in Shappenweiler's 2015 report. And when I called them on it and asked why, they said they couldn't find the pipes that would have conducted the water across. So I'm helping them tonight. And it's possible that they were covered up. That's, I'm not arguing that this is some intentional deception, but they are there. And so it may be that it's not just 4%, maybe it's 6%. I don't know. In addition, each of those areas have impoundments above them. And the fact that that area didn't flood may be a reflection of the state of those impoundments. Moreover, those impoundments, if they were to subject, to have a sudden failure of some kind, could represent a different kind of hazard of inundation for SAM, as well as our neighborhoods. But I realize that may not be part of the coincident storm-related modeling that you're doing. So it may well be out of scope, and I understand that. But I do think that to the extent that those areas represent more water than perhaps was visualized based on initial impressions, you may find, the city may find, and SAM may find that the wetlands extending not just 1 acre adjacent to Pilarcitos Avenue, but up towards and indeed east of Highway 1 could actually change the character of water arriving in this area at Kehoe, via the Kehoe watercourse. And the water that you want to save is the last inch that causes the berm to overtop. You really don't care whether it's coming from Pilarcitos or the Kehoe watercourse. So all acres are not created equal. A different wetland could have a different depth. It could have different manners of taking water in. It could have different transpiration, different evaporation, and different outflow methods. So, when I read the report and it said an acre won't make a difference, I would respectfully say maybe that acre didn't, but maybe 20 acres in a different spot could make a huge difference. And want to be sure no one reads that off.
Can we close out the PowerPoint and have?
Sure. Yep, absolutely.
So sorry.
No.
So I realize I'm being very long-winded. That's normal for me, but you're not used to it. So I just want to apologize for that and then close by pointing out the study also talked about the potential safety resulting from the topping of trees that are on the berm, because when the wind blows hard, they could behave like kites. They could uproot. We have lost cypress in storms multiple times. And in fact, the report's a bit out of date. David, you wouldn't know this, but they actually has been some tree topping that's taken place just before this last windy storm. So not a week too soon. And we're very grateful for that. So I am ready to cooperate with anyone who's interested in learning more about this and stand ready to be a good neighbor and share what I monitor. I really appreciate your time and your professionalism and your willingness to let me share what I understand for the greater good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We know you are a great resource for all this. Anyone else from the public would like to speak? Do we have comments and questions from the board members? Matthew.
I have a question. One of the first maps that are in this report and which she showed shows the two outlets, Keogh Ditch and Pillarcitos Creek, merging right where that outfall structure is. And as he mentioned, that could affect the vent or clean out or whatever it is. And so does, and this could happen, well, he said in a 100-year event, but that could be tomorrow or next or 5 years from now. And do you have an idea of what effect that would have on that part of the structure and what could be done about it?
And can you describe that structure a little bit? What exactly is there? It wasn't clear to me. So that was one of my questions as well. What is that structure there that we're talking about?
It's an air release valve.
So what is?
So the air release valve, in order for the diffusers, the effluent diffusers to work properly, depending on the tidal occurrences that's going on, any back pressure that builds up so that the pumps and the flow of the water can still continue. It allows that trapped air, forces it out so it doesn't create an airlock, if you will. So it just allows it so it doesn't
Build pressure.
build pressure. Yes, she said. Good answer.
But it's attached to the outfall pipe that takes
Yeah,
the flow from the plant into the ocean, but it's a vent on that pipe that goes up and reaches the surface.
the vent is on the pipe right by, I'm sure you've been on the bridge. It's right over here. So it's right on the south side of that bridge. Where the water flows out, where the Pillarcitos and the Keogh watercourse sort of run together, typically it runs out a wee bit further south, almost towards Venice Beach is usually where the mouth is open. At least that's been what I've noticed most of the time. In fact, recently it wasn't even open. This weekend it's open now, but it wasn't flowing actively. But it is further away from the blow-off valve than maybe the pictures has it depicted on. So it is quite a bit further downstream than that. But if anything happened to that, yeah, that would be problematic, I guess. I don't know what we could do to fix it. We could raise it. I don't know if raising it would help a lot. It would help some. We could bring it up 6 feet, I suppose, and build a bigger CMU wall or a cage or something around it. I don't know. That would be one sort of fix.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. That didn't really answer Matthew's question, though, Mike. I jumped in to understand what it was.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah. Suppose that structure as it's currently built was inundated for several hours.
What would flooded with water and it didn't allow the pressure?
Yeah.
It's much like the air vacuum release valves that we have on the intertide pipeline system. So it could build up pressure, and I guess in theory it could cause a rupture in the pipe.
Rupture of the pipe burst could take place over a period of time. It would develop cavitation and spots in the pipes and over a period of time.
Stop the outfall from outfalling? Would it stop the water? It goes out and stop it?
No, I don't think. I think it would go ahead and outfall would take place, but these air pockets would start damaging the pipe over a period of time.
And when the pipe broke, then the wastewater would flow here instead of out at the outfall, potentially.
I'm not an engineer, so
probably. Yes.
No. Okay. All right. Anything else, Matthew?
No.
Debbie, you have?
Yeah, I liked Matthew's question. You never know when you might get a 100-year storm. And I think we're going to have to consider, as we identify priorities and capital projects, that we may want to think big. In other words, build to a higher level of protection to avoid, these somewhat randomized, storm events. And in fact, who knows what might happen with the polar ice sheets. If we had an ice sheet collapse, we might have catastrophic sea level rise beyond the state's, 2 feet in 2040, 4 feet, those are good sort of goals and a way to plan, but, the best laid plans can be, ruptured, by these catastrophic events. So I think we're going to have to, and I know that like one shoreline is thinking like maybe we build once instead of adaptive pathways, right? Because adaptive pathways, every decade or so gets to be pretty expensive, right? So maybe you want the largest protection to be built like now, a cushion, if you will. So I liked your question, Matthew. So one of the things I noticed in the various maps showing flooding at the flange, that it seems like Kehoe watercourse, I might have been imagining it looked like it was staying pretty much the same while the plant was getting, pretty flooded. So it looked like the creek was overtopping, the plant was getting flooded. Then I would look at Kehoe watercourse and it seemed to stay the same color blue. Like it didn't seem like it evolved much under the various storm scenarios. So maybe it's because it's not going to be affected in the same way. Maybe it was not considered to the same depth as Pillars Creek flooding. But I just noted that. I don't know if you have an observation about that. I do want to say that I think the way that you applied and integrated various models was absolutely stunning. It's not just science, it's an art form to integrate all those various views of upstream and downstream and coastal. So it was really a beautiful study. It was very interesting. So kudos for that. But my big question that I keep coming back to is the issue of groundwater. We integrated a lot of things, but yet groundwater has not been addressed yet. And it seems to me, my question is, so will we undertake groundwater studies and then come back and integrate that information into the models that you have in this report, or how's that going to work? Because it seems to me, depending on the risk of groundwater and the levels, that might change the sort of priority capital projects we undertake, and maybe even cause us to consider more seriously relocating. It's one thing to have the water coming at you. It's another thing if the water is coming up underneath you, right? So my big question for tonight is how are we going to deal with groundwater? Because we have to. Groundwater precedes sea level rise. Sea level rise starts and it causes groundwater to increase in elevation. So that's the big issue for me in this. It's a wonderful report, but I think that's still the big question is, what do we do about groundwater?
And on page 87, one of their conclusions is the threat of groundwater intrusion to the facility should be evaluated.
Exactly.
So good point. Yes. So can you respond to that?
I think Dave monitoring wells.
Okay.
Did I say one last thing and I'll just shut up? I also want to hear about, I think your idea of monitoring is really, really important. So I hope we have a discussion either in the form of a workshop going forward. But how are we going to do monitoring? Because I agree that that's going to be really important. I don't know if our staff does it, whether we have a retainer, under certain circumstances to monitor, but I think that's really important. And that's all I got. So sorry.
David, did you want to respond before?
I'll let Kishan or Tim jump in first, but I have a couple thoughts, but they may, I know there's some stuff going on out there. Okay, well, I'll go first then, and they can tell me where I go off book. Since I can't see everybody and read the room, I apologize. So we did acknowledge that right now the confluence between Kehoe and Pillarcitos is not well defined. And so I think there's a combination of sort of during certain times of the year where that gets really boggy down in that confluence and probably contributes to some of the seepage that is observed in some of the basements in the facility today. I think we should look at what those seepage rates are like and throughout the year in a more systematic monitoring way. And I think that and in conversations with Kishan and Tim, there's some old monitoring wells that probably haven't been activated in a while that could be reoccupied. And we could start to understand what the seasonal groundwater dynamics are there. It also wouldn't be difficult to put in another, monitoring well so that we do understand what those fluctuations are and what the implications are for fluvial and coastal processes. So, not going too into the science, but basically you have flows coming down, but it's coming down onto a basement. If groundwater is well below the surface, then that water can saturate into the channel and into the floodplain. If that water is right at the surface, there's no place for it to saturate or, penetrate into the ground. And so the flooding gets much worse. So it is a question that we were left sort of scratching our heads on, and we had to punt. It certainly could be integrated into this model, like some of the questions and issues that Jimmy raised. This model is a really well-calibrated tool that could be used to answer additional questions around groundwater, around Kehoe watercourse changes, Caltrans, wetlands, stormwater management. So, this investment built a tool that we can use further.
Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. On the various concerns which have been brought out by the board members as well as Jimmy, what we can do is, as far as the scope of the original scope of work is concerned, David from Integral has already addressed all of it. So we can go ahead and receive and file this report and then sit with David and see what are the items which he could address or what we could get addressed from somebody else and bring it back to the board at a later date. And then we'll see how the board would like to prioritize and address those compared with the other projects that we are doing currently.
Okay, that sounds good. Anyone else? I have some comments. Yeah.
Yeah. The height of the burn. You weren't really suggesting a 28-foot burn.
That was my question too. Yeah.
Were you?
That's
yeah, that's relative to sea. That's the relative to a datum. So it would really only be adding 3 to 4 feet, maybe 5 feet in some places. So that's an absolute elevation to raise the berm to, not adding a 27-foot wall on top of the existing.
You start at 21 feet. Is 21 feet. So from 21, he's going up to 26.
Okay. It's existing at 21. All right. Yeah. That was one question. The other question was the material that the burn will be made out of, should we elevate it? Is it smart to just add more dirt, or do we add other materials that, would withstand erosion better?
That gets into some geotechnical engineering questions that is beyond my expertise. Would certainly be able to guide that in a quick way to understand what needed to be done. But that gets into sort of next levels of design and planning and geotechnical evaluation. It might not have, if you go up, say 4 feet on a berm on the existing profile, that means you have to go out a lot more too into the plant and into, the surrounding area and floodplain. So there may be more of a compaction with more of a vertical wall component or some other type of retrofit to that berm that's not just more dirt higher. And that's where, a geotechnical engineer would be more qualified than I. And I'll stop there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a question that maybe we should be looking at.
Yes.
To see if they can do additional work for us as a geotech evaluation of the berm. Yep. Good questions. Or anything else? Stop.
Yeah, David, I was curious, and I'm sorry I didn't have time to read the whole report. I was trying to find. Do you include in the report your basis for the reference of the 100 and 500 and even the 37-year event?
Yeah. Sam, you want to take that?
Yeah. So certainly we use the Pillar-Cedos, the USGS gauge of the Pillar-Cedos Creek. And so it outlines what those return periods are. And I did want to mention so the U.S. Yeah, so there we go. We can see that here. What's interesting, I think it's interesting at least. We've had a number of rainfall events over the past month or so. The heaviest one, the most recent heavy event was on January 24th, 22nd, and it got up to a little bit over 1,000 cubic feet per second. So still only maybe around a 5-year event. The event on the 22nd of December was close to a little bit over 2,000. So it's closer to it was around a 37-year event. But yeah, we did a lot of analysis on that USGS gauge data going back to like 1986, I believe, or maybe beyond that.
If I understand, when you're talking about the event, you're kind of looking at a single metric, the cubic feet per second.
Correct.
Okay. How do you deal with that since you've got 2 waterways surrounding the plant?
So there's no direct data on Pillars on Kehoe watercourse. And so we used, and this is what Jimmy Benjamin was alluding to, we scaled the discharge coming through Pillars through Kehoe watercourse based on the watershed areas, so the drainage areas for Kehoe versus Pillars Cedos. So it's an assumption that we have to make. It's certainly something that there would need to be a little bit more evaluation of that, but it was an assumption we would make based on the limited data that we had for Kehoe.
Well, and I would add 2 things to that. One is that based on with respect to Kehoe, with conversations with Jimmy, we looked at a sensitivity analysis. So we didn't pick one number. We looked at sort of a variable range in there to see if adding 2-3% broke anything. And it really didn't. So we kind of took that off the table as a really critical flood component. It definitely plays a role, but it's not the driving force is Cedos Creek. And then we did look at, you can look at average daily discharge or instantaneous discharge. And that's a very, again, sort of nerd statement here, but when we get these really intense rainfalls that it rains very patchy, but it's like intense for like a half an hour and it's just dumping like an inch of rain in an hour, that spikes the hydrograph much more than if you smooth it over an entire day and it says 2 inches of rain. If that 2 inches of rain, it came in 20 minutes, that's a bigger problem. And so we looked at that instantaneous discharge peak as opposed to the daily. So hopefully that helps.
It does. Do you have a link or a reference to where the USGS data is?
Yeah, that's definitely referenced in the report.
Okay.
I don't have it presently, but yeah.
One last nerdy question. Do you know if that's just historical data, right?
It's real time. You can look at it, right? You can see what this gauge is going on right now.
In terms of the 100-year event, for example, that's like looking at the trailing 100 years. Is that the idea?
Yes, and that's a great point. This is something that came up with one of our discussions with Moz and the city of Half Moon Bay. I will profess we're working for the city right now on developing their adaptation plan to sort of all climate hazards. So we're not going away. Still here to help. One of the things that did come up in conversations is that as the climate science and projections of increase and intensity of rainfall and all of that gets refined, then those flood profiles and the dependence on historic observations starts to get a little sketchy. And so one of the things he told me to write in the adaptation report, sorry, Maz, if you're there, but one of the recommendations is really to reevaluate those peak intensity discharges under future climate conditions and how that peak intensity of discharge may change rather than sort of the daily average kind of stuff, which is what most climate variables are projecting. So that is something that could be done specifically for Pillarcitos, as sort of another add-on here to this work that would be relevant to this, making some of these decisions if that peak intensity is going to change over time.
Yeah, Debbie, that's what I was thinking when you were talking about maybe we want to give ourselves a little more margin.
Yeah.
Because some of those intensities seems to be swinging more wildly lately.
Yeah, and it's hard to predict, It's like guesswork in a lot of cases.
But it's more energetic, and I mean
well, they're putting some science to it these days. Yeah,
they are.
We started talking a very long time ago about why are we seeing 100-year storms every 10 years?
Right.
Yeah.
And that was 20 years ago. We were starting to notice, and so looking at the trailing past is useful. It gives us kind of a baseline, but the intensity, and I really like your point about the instantaneous peaks on the CFS, because that's what the berm cares about.
And the biggest storm in history in California that we know about was in 1846 or something like that, which flooded. What?
1862.
Yeah, that flooded the Park storm. Now I have a couple of questions. It's my understanding that on Pillarcitos Creek there's a dam up above that can release water and could potentially fail. Did you factor that into your look at this at all?
We did not. We have been investigating that more as part of this Half Moon Bay adaptation plan. What I will say, though, is that the main limitation to increasing discharge at this stretch of Pillarcitos Creek is the culvert at Highway 1. And right now, if you get over, forgive me, I don't remember what recurrence interval flows, you start to backwater. Not all the water can go through the pipe underneath the bridge or cannot go through underneath the bridge above that goes over Highway 1. And so it backwaters and sort of spills out on the floodplain and before it comes through. And so right now, if that dam were to break, unless it was enough volume to overtop the highway, the volume that we would see in Pillarcitos Creek is still regulated by that bridge and culvert system at Highway 1. And the city...
It's the Main Street.
That one too.
That one seems to me more problematic than Highway 1.
That would probably be overtopped.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just an interesting factor that didn't get figured in. It sounds as if one of your recommendations is a geotech evaluation of the berm and the berm design, which I think was put up in really a good effort to get something there. But and it does say that you're recommending that the critical facilities be raised 6 feet.
So based on the modeling and flood depths that we saw associated with the 500-year and sea level rise, the critical infrastructure, and I'm just going to call it the electrical room, which looks like a NASA space station if you haven't been in there, like from the 70s. It's pretty cool. But that all has a lot of challenges. And if that goes down, I mean, when it was flooded, you had 2 feet of water and a lot of electricity going through it. That's not safe. And so that to me is the critical piece that needs to get moved up in elevation. And so with this flood model, we sort of say, here are some potential locations. We clearly see where it's not going to get wet. And I think using some of this, testing some other flood intensities and stuff, we can really help perhaps refine a location to put that critical, component of the facility that's out of harm's way, for good, whether the berm fails and the trees topple and, everything else goes wrong.
All right. Well, just to finish up, in your conclusions, you say that the threat of groundwater intrusion, which is what you raised, should be evaluated. But I do want to emphasize that the main conclusion is that the repairs to the SAM facility following the observed flooding appear sufficient to provide flood protection from a 100-year discharge event under existing sea levels. So while we have a lot to do to make this place safer and to make changes to protect it in the future, the immediate, you are saying that the immediate work is sufficient to handle a 100-year storm.
Yeah, yes. And if I put any caveat on that, like it's that I don't know how robust the construction of that was. And that's where the geotechnical engineering to look at, the erodibility of that repair is. Because elevation wise, it's good. But that flow against the repair, against the berm can erode the berm. And we didn't look at the erosion potential of the berm. So that'd be the only caveat. That's why I'm saying the geotechnical evaluation is really important.
High priority to do that, almost more than some of these more detailed looks at the.
I would say my priority would be to move the electrical room altogether from the present location. That would be a more immediate solution.
But how much is that going to cost? That's going to be
that's already on the infrastructure list.
We already have an estimate.
Yeah, an estimate.
3 years old.
Yeah.
I didn't hear a mention of the generator.
And the generator. Too.
Yeah.
So when you're talking electrical room, are you including the generator in that?
Yes. I mean, that is an amazing piece of machinery that looks like an old school locomotive. It is really like, I walked in there, I was like, this is amazing. Like,
in a bad way.
Yeah.
Also on the list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Matthew had
sorry.
The report mentions possibility of sheet pile wall instead of berm, and David mentioned a vertical wall as well. Do we have, is there enough knowledge now to address the question of whether such a wall completely around the plant, I guess would have to be, could also address the groundwater on the plant premises itself?
I would say those are a little bit decoupled. The geotech evaluation and engineering sort of options for increasing the berm crest elevation are different than the groundwater elevations, because if you build this beautiful castle wall, but it floods from the ground, then you have a swimming pool. So the groundwater issues are also really important to get a better handle on. And that was sort of not our scope of work. And so we had to acknowledge that, but that's something that we could certainly add in, and that may affect some of the, some of the other adaptation approaches.
On the groundwater topic, I think that we mentioned there's some monitoring opportunities, installation of monitoring wells, but a simple logbook of observations at the facility as well would be helpful. If people start to see water or things when it's not raining, or when there are events that might not flood the facility, but we start to see intrusion, making note of when and where will be really helpful. We have the Pillar Cedos gauge data that we can go and reference to see kind of what the conditions are in and around the site. So we do think it would be helpful to have a reference of observations moving forward.
Well, thank you for a very thorough and very interesting and helpful report. And we look forward to readdressing some of the additional issues that need to be addressed. So thank you. Anybody?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. It has been a really fun study, and hope to keep working with you all.
Thank you, David.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you. Have a great night.
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 Right. Moving on. Item B, receive and file report. C, approval of dental, vision, disability, group life, A and D and D&L, voluntary life, accidental deaths, and dismemberment, A and D, effective March 1st, 2024.
Yep. So SAM currently provides employee benefit programs to all represented, unrepresented employees and the general manager. Now, the last year or presently, we are providing all these dental, vision, and all these disability, group life, AD&D, and EAP programs through Standard. And staff has found that services for Standard is turning out to be a little more expensive individually, plus all services are not available in the course. They'll have to go up the hill and not very convenient. So then once we got this feedback, we looked around and got proposals from Principal, Standard again, and then Delta Dental and MetLife. And Busher Law's firm was very helpful in assisting us with it, and we got in touch with our broker, Keenan and Associates, and we found that it is best to switch over to Principal from Standard. We had this Principal a couple of years back, and with this, with the Principal, we would be able to save about $1,600 in annual premium costs over a 2-year guarantee. And then access to dental care is more convenient. So we sat with staff and took a vote, and we found that this is the most preferred provider they'd like to go with. So here it is. We are here, and Chris Boucher is also here to answer any questions, if any.
Anyone have questions?
Would you like to add anything more, Chris?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Good evening, directors. So yeah, just to reiterate, this is not adding any benefit that SAM has already offered to our employees currently, but rather it's really just changing provider. Being out in the coast side, it is a little more unique. Some dental providers, may not take all insurance plans. And so one of the things we did was we did a census of all the dental providers, vision providers, and so forth that employees are currently utilizing. And then with the broker's help, we're able to identify Principal as the carrier that more employees use. As the board may know, even though a dental plan is a dental plan, when you're using a dentist that's in network, there are some out-of-pocket cost savings. When you use an in-network dentist, the insurance is also able to cap the fees that the dentist can charge. So this is really more for that reason, to switch carriers. The other nice thing too is we do get a 2-year guarantee by switching. So there's stability in cost, and there would not be a rate increase during this time period. So that's another benefit. And of course, there's an incidental savings for switching to Principal, but the primary driver is to look for an insurance carrier that can accommodate capture most of the dentists that are used by the employees and so forth. And it's a bundle deal, so that's why we're switching everything over to Principal. Happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Like an excellent move. Does anyone have comments? Deb?
No, I'd like to move.
Director Penrose.
Sorry, move for staff recommendation.
A second.
Right. Any further discussion? A roll call, please.
Director Clark.
Oh, aye. I thought you were asking for a comment.
Aye.
Director Boyd. Aye. Director Radek.
Aye.
Director Decker.
Aye.
Chair Dye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris.
All right. And I understand that they change in the agenda. Is this true, or are we?
No, I haven't heard anything. Did somebody want to change an agenda? I don't know.
All right. Well, then moving on to item D, status of mid-year budget adjustment.
Yes. So the budget amendment for the fiscal year 23-24, talks have been going on since last August. It was identified that the budget amendment will be required to handle, to address 2 important projects, which is the Princeton Pump Station Rehabilitation Project and the Montara Force Main. So discussions were held in August with the board, and the board directed staff to return back in the month of January 2024, when the deadline for the issuance of the Court of Appeals decision would be done. So Sam waited until January, and well, the Court of Appeals decision did not resolve the matters in dispute. And we brought this again to the board in the month of January. And January 22nd, the board directed Sam's staff to authorize the general manager to submit the mid-year budget adjustment to the member agencies. So this was sent out to all the 3 member agencies. MWST adopted the resolution at their meeting on February 1st for a budget amendment. And GCSD has indicated that it anticipates approving the mid-year budget adjustment at the upcoming Thursday meeting of February 15th. The City of Half Moon Bay adopted a resolution at their council meeting on February 6th, approving the requested budget amendment, conditioned on a renewed stipulation to pay under protest, while reserving its rights, of course, for final resolution in the ongoing court action. So this is the present status of the budget adjustment, and I just wanted to give an update. Any questions? I'm here to answer. Staff is here to answer too.
questions, any comments?
Jeremy has
something.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on, and this may be why the chair asked about changes to the agenda. So the update needed to be done, but I think, and Kishan, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I think we're not going to be asking, because Granada has not yet acted on the proposal for a mid-year budget adjustment. I don't believe we're going to be asking for, I think we're going to be asking the board to table the other items until Granada has acted, because we need to have that action taken. At least there's some ambiguity in the JPA agreement. I know that's hard to believe, but it doesn't actually deal with mid-year budget adjustments. It's not really in there at all. It mostly deals with specific timelines that are supposed to be hit that that have already taken place. But in my mind, I think it's reasonable to do a mid-year budget adjustment. I think that's pretty common. A lot of JPAs do that. But in order to ensure that we have the best chance of being able to move forward promptly, in order to get some of these items constructed quickly in accordance with pertinent timelines, it probably makes sense to defer on the other items until either a special meeting or the next regular board meeting.
Right. What?
Yeah, but we're talking of this item where no action is required. It's just a status.
Right.
So we can move on to the next item and decide what we need to do.
All right. Well, moving on to item E. Are we deferring this? Is this?
Yeah. So an appropriate action to take for the board could be to table items 4E, F, and G until the next regular board meeting or the next special board meeting, whichever comes first.
Yes, Christian?
Yeah, but that doesn't answer staff's concerns, which have been brought since January, that the Princeton Pump Station contractor has started the work, submittals are going on, and the contractor is ready to mobilize and move into the Princeton Pump Station this week. So if the board does not take a decision today, if it wishes to defer it, then please be aware that there could be more and more liability if the stipulation doesn't get approved or if the budget doesn't get approved. Because as you see now, even though GCSD might approve the budget this Thursday, there's still a rider from Half Moon Bay saying that the stipulation needs to be approved. So that doesn't change the decision. So I would suggest that instead of, you could still table it, but please take a decision that the project could be on hold for the next 2 weeks until GCSD approves and until the councils get together and get a stipulation approved. And that timeline should be not more than 2 weeks. So my suggestion is to put the project on hold for the next 2 weeks.
Speaking for Half Moon Bay, we're prepared to have a special meeting.
I think we would be willing to have a special meeting as well.
Yeah, but when do we want to have the special meeting? Because that's what, that's what was told in January 22nd, that member agencies will have special meeting and have the budget approved before the February 12th meeting. And here we are discussing that one of the agencies is going to have it on 15th. So my timeline is the contractor is starting work on Wednesday. He's going to demo certain items. So if you can put the project on hold for 2 weeks, it would help. And then we can come back and discuss it on February 26th.
Would someone like to make a motion to place the project on hold for 2 weeks and for discussion?
I'd like to understand that will increase the cost with that contractor, correct?
It would, yes.
Do you have any idea how much?
I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea.
He does actually have equipment out there already.
Yeah.
So for all intents and purposes, I think he would say he's mobilized.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but if we go ahead if we move forward with the project and decision is not taken within 2 weeks, then we could have more concern, more problems, more damage.
Are there any set up in the contract regarding failure to mobilize or inability, that's not their fault to mobilize?
They would be able to submit a change order, right? Because they would have mobilized and demobilized.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful to try to identify a potential date for a special meeting? I mean, a week from today is President's Day, so that's a holiday. And then
I'm open all next week.
Yeah, I can make most times next week.
The 20th.
Well, the 20th is next week, next Tuesday.
Well,
right?
Kishan, does a special meeting solve the problem with demobilizing, I guess is the question, because if it's
Wednesday
delay of a week versus 2 weeks, is that going to be materially different?
No, I mean, if we have a special meeting, say hypothetically we have a special meeting on Tuesday, then we can put the project on hold for 1 week.
But a special meeting at this point is unlikely to do anything except extend the current impasse, correct? And
I don't know.
Provided
It's hard to tell.
Provided the councils are able to meet together and come with a stipulation which will be agreeable to all the three agencies and come back, because I don't seem to be concerned with GCSD approving the budget, because that's even if you say it's already approved, we still have the stipulation which has to be approved. So that's more important.
Yeah.
How quickly can the councils get together and get an agreeable solution is.
We can meet Monday. I know it's probably a holiday for you guys, but
I don't see any reason not to meet on a Monday.
Well, it's a holiday for them.
But before Monday, would the councils be able to agree to a particular stipulation is what we are talking about.
Yeah, I understand that both GCSD and
if you're putting an expectation on a negotiation of a stipulation, it seems highly unlikely to me.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
so,
that's why I'm concerned.
We'll set a special meeting so we can agree to a stipulation. It seems very unlikely that we are going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Well, let's give it a try.
That's precisely what I'm concerned about, because August is when the board assured me that we can go ahead and award the project to the contractor.
Yes.
We could have put a hold then. We couldn't have awarded, but we were told, Sam staff was told that you go ahead, we'll have the funding in January. So we went ahead with that. And here we are in February, and I wouldn't like to move forward the project with an assurance that payment will be made in the next 2 weeks or 1 month or whatever.
The responsible thing might be to put the project on hold, vote to put the project on hold tonight.
Stop everything? Do you happen to know what the mobilization, demobilization cost is in the contractor's bid? Because that would be reasonable to expect that we would have to pay that twice, and then be subject to their availability on the return. That's pretty normal, right? If we cause it to be delayed and they need to demobilize the equipment because they have other commitments.
Yeah, but on the contrary, if we do not allow him to mobilize for the next 2 weeks, then there'll be less damage because he's not started the work. He's not started.
Yeah, we just don't know what their commitments are to other customers.
Correct.
Right. So they might have to make a business decision too. Correct. So I'm just trying to get a sense of the magnitude of the cost of the delay. So.
Well, I don't think we want the contractor to really take a lot of big steps toward mobilizing.
Well, no, but if we're not able to greenlight the project, we're going to be at their mercy and their schedule and their commitments. And if they have to demobilize and remobilize, we will pay that cost.
Yes.
And then we won't be on the timeline that we are now, because we'll be at the mercy of when the contractor could return. Because if they have to demobilize to get equipment to another job site where they have another commitment, we have to wait for the gap in their planning to be able to bring the crew back and all the equipment. So that's just part of the cost of, like, you don't mobilize until you know you have the money, is the typical thing.
Yeah, offhand, I wouldn't know what it is. I'll have to check the bid documents and find out what the mobilization costs.
Is the mobilization complete?
No, he's not even started mobilizing.
Okay.
He would be starting
the said he had started.
No, he'll be starting this week. He's just got the equipment, but he'll be coming with the crew and start digging and demoing and all that this week.
Got it.
We've got all that scheduled this week.
From my understanding of the situation right now, I think we should authorize him to put a hold on the project.
For at least 2 weeks, so that we take a decision on February 26th at the next board meeting, what we need to do. Hopefully by that time,
would be more responsible. I would be comfortable with that.
Hopefully by 26th, then we'll be able to take a decision one way or the other.
Sure.
The stipulation is the crux here, and if Half Moon Bay forwards language on exactly what the stipulation would say, I'm sure that both full boards at the districts will have to meet and approve that. So
that's interesting because that's not what we've been hearing all along. What we've been hearing all along is that no stipulation will be agreed to by Granada or by Montera.
Well, again, depends on what the stipulation says.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, my understanding is that, Counselor, that you were taking another stab at language.
Yes, the discussion, the legal counsel talked today. We always have productive discussions. It's always, good to talk. What I'm going to try to do, and it should be pretty simple, is just make it the most vanilla of vanilla stipulations ever. It's going to say, essentially, everyone reserves all rights to the extent they have them, and nobody is giving up anything by virtue of paying. That's it, right? Nothing about refunds, nothing about particular remedies, just bare bones. That's kind of the concept.
GCSD attorney urged me today to be careful about having discussions about these kinds of matters at these meetings. It should not be done in public. These are matters for the individual boards to be discussing with their attorney, not for us to be sitting here in this meeting talking about.
Well, I think it was okay for the counselor to at least say what the process is.
Yes.
Going on right now, but rather than taking a position on it.
Yeah. Does anyone want to make a motion about the contract? Are we going to let this contractor go ahead and move all the equipment on when everything is still so much up in the air?
I agree with you. I think that's problematic. Yeah.
I'll make the motion. I guess I'm not supposed to, the chair make the motions, but I'll make a motion that we authorize the general manager to, where's the wording? Place to request that the contractor hold on further activity for 2 weeks.
Delay mobilization
for 2 weeks. Pending.
As Tim already pointed out, and I worked on a lot of construction sites, when you have your equipment there, you would mobilize.
Right.
There will already be costs involved here.
I know, but more equipment is all he has is 2 pieces of equipment right now. So if we can prevent, and they were going to do some demolition this week. I mean, it seems irresponsible to go ahead to go ahead for that for a contract where only Granada and Montera are willing to pay their share. So
I'm sorry, that's not true. Half Moon Bay has been willing to pay and has been paying their share all along. So please don't make comments like that, Chair.
What meetings have we been in?
Anyway, moving on from that, I made a motion that we defer it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there further discussion?
I'm going to express Montera that was very clear and unanimous and very quick vote to fund it. And it's Montera's intent to see it funded and built on schedule, subject to, how do you put it, Jeremy, the pertinent timelines. That's our intention. We've acted on that intention, and I, for one, have no intention of voting to delay this. It's not going to change the outcome, but I wanted to explain my no vote.
Okay. Roll call.
Yes, we have a roll call.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Penrose?
Aye.
Director Boyd? No. Director Radek?
Aye.
Director Decker?
No.
Chair Dye?
Aye.
So just to be clear on the motion that just passed, did that include tabling the action on items 4E through G to the next board meeting?
Yes.
No. 4G can be considered.
4G can be considered.
4F and G are independent of each other.
Yeah, I agree.
If you table 4F,
we can still talk about G. We should move on to G.
We can talk about 4G.
Yes. So it's E. We deferred E and F.
So we got a decision on E that we would place the project on hold for the next 2 weeks.
Right.
We're going to table F4F, which is the design of the Montara force main, because it's linked with the budget adjustment. Coming to item 4G.
Yes.
Which is actually an alternate for item 4F, where we are suggesting that the general manager is suggesting that we advertise for progressive design and build of Montara force mains. Now, if you see in your packet, we've given several timelines. We do not need a budget amendment until almost August, July, August. So this would mean that we would bring it back to the board as an RFQ document on the February 12th, a document where the board can approve. We can go out for an RFQ, request for qualification. Now, before I go there, the Senate Bill 706 was passed in October 2003, which allows public agencies to go out for progressive design bid. So this is a case where the contractor can go ahead. We would go out for RFQs and then RFPs, and then the contractor will give us a lump sum price. Will give us a price for the contract. He will go ahead with the design, and we have a choice after he does the design to move forward with it or not. So that's the advantage of progressive design bid. But I do have SRT consultants. I have Tanya and Rachel, who are well versed with the progressive design bid, who have done it on several occasions and can also answer a lot of questions. But I would like to emphasize that if you go ahead with this, we will bring it back to the board in February, and then work on the RFQ document along with the member agency engineers, come with a particular acceptable document, bring it here once we do the RFQ and then the RFP. We do not need any funding. We do not need any budget adjustment until, I would say, July, August. So we can still move forward with this and showing good faith to ERF that we are proceeding with that route. We are required to do the design of the Montara force main by December 31st, 2024, and complete the construction by June 2026. So if we go in that route, we'll be able to show ERF that we will still be in compliance. We are in good faith, although we would not have the complete design by December 31st, but we have the intent to achieve the final deadline by June 30th, 2026. So this is just one option. So,
but the option comes at a cost, right?
Come again?
This option comes at a cost.
It does come at a cost, yes.
It is higher.
But at that point of time,
our original method.
Correct. But at that point of time, one can decide whether to move forward or not.
And we don't.
You can always say this is too expensive. We do not want to proceed with it, and we can explain to people like ARF that this was the route that we selected, but it is expensive, which is not fitting into our budget. So we need to go by a different route.
Tanya, did you want to? Sorry.
I'd like to inquire about the estimated extra expense of this method.
Come again, sorry.
The estimated additional expense for this method is how much?
Right now, we do not have any expense. We will have marginal expense until we go out for an RFQ.
No, but Peter's question was, by going this route, it's a little unconventional, and it's likely to increase the ultimate cost of the project.
Correct.
And I'm just asking for a ballpark swag at how much. If it's $1 more, I don't care. If it's $1 million more, I do care.
I don't know. Maybe
Tanya, would you like to speak to that?
I'm sorry. I have voice issues, but I will try. I think General Counsel has a hand up, though. Jeremy, did you want me to speak before you?
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, go ahead. They've asked you to opine, so that'd be great.
Okay. It is hard to estimate the cost, but it will be higher because, well, it may not. It may be higher up to 20% more. So if we're talking about a $10 million project, that's a $2 million increase. Yes, it's significant. However, the general manager suggested board consideration that that if the costs come in and they're too high, you just don't move forward.
And I'm sorry, just to clarify, this is for the design, and so that's not a 10 million. We're talking right now about 800,000 for the, or 900,000 for the designs. So the additional cost, if it's 20%, would only be $200,000.
No, talking about the overall project.
So by going design build, the overall project could cost 20% more?
Yes.
Oh. Huh.
Yeah, they get kludged together. When you design build, so it becomes. I mean, that's the advantage of design build is you're not having with the traditional design bid build, right? You have design, that's a separate contract. Then based on whatever the approved design is, you bid it out and people bid on that, or companies bid on that. So the savings in time is based on the fact you don't have those separate steps now. It's all part of one thing. And that's actually one of the things I was going to say. That's one of the progressive design build is really interesting, and it's something that a lot of agencies are really looking at. But it would not result in the design being completed by December 31st, 2024, in all likelihood. So that just needs to be something the board considers, is that if you're wanting to be super strict on complying with the consent decree,
no,
this doesn't necessarily solve your problem.
But nevertheless, Jeremy, even if we do not take a decision on progressive design build, we would not be able to complete by December 31st, 2024, even if you go by the conventional route. Assuming that March is when you guys come back and do the stipulation and say that, okay, it's all ready, let's go ahead with the design of the force main. Now, the best part of progressive design build is you can divide it into two phases, as indicated in my staff report, phase 1 and phase 2. And prior to phase 1, we would award the job to a contractor, say contractor A. And then after phase 1, that's when he would have finished the design and he would give us the cost for the construction. We can still pull out of the phase 1 and say, okay, we'll take only the design. We don't want to move forward with the construction. So we would have got the design completed and then go for construction separately. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Tanya.
Correct. No, that's right.
And we have the design. We have to like that design.
Yeah, we'll be working with him for the design, of course. We'll be giving a lot of inputs for the design.
May I suggest that we hold off on this issue until we have some more clarity after the Thursday meeting at Granada and the consequent feedback on the stipulation?
Well, at this point, all we're doing is requesting that Kitchen start looking into this, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and bring back something.
And bring it back to the board with an RFQ document. So
we're not proposing that. I mean,
Half Moon Bay is fine with, issuing the RFQ. Asking for people to, come forward. Of course, not approving a contract, correct. But we're happy to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason not to flesh out this option.
Yeah,
so that we have this as an alternative.
If it's not the decision on which option we choose, it's only asking for a quote.
Yeah, it's just authorizing me to go ahead and build a document for the RFQ and develop this RFQ after discussion with the member agency engineers, and then start the advertised process in March. So before that, we will know one way or the other.
We're good with that.
Is this an action item?
We could.
Well, it's authorized.
Is this a guidance or an action?
No, my recommendation, it says to authorize the general manager. So
that's an action.
Okay, I move that we authorize the general manager to go ahead as per staff report.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? We have a roll call, please.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Penrose?
Aye.
Director Boyd?
Aye.
Director Ruddock?
Aye.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Chair Dye?
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. All right.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Rachel. The next item.
My agenda is stuck in the middle of all these pages here.
General manager's report.
General manager's report. Thank you.
Yep. The detailed report will be in the second meeting of the month. So, any questions? Staff is here to answer.
Okay. Attorney's report.
Just very briefly, just want to let the board know there is a bill currently pending in the legislature that seems to be moving that would expand opportunities for remote participation, particularly dealing with committees. it does need some clarification as to whether it would apply to standing committees like some of Sam's standing committees or not. But and that's something that we're going to seek through the Association of California Water Agencies in all likelihood, is to get some additional granularity. But it looks positive. So I know that's been an issue for the board in the past. So I just wanted to make you aware that that bill is moving forward. With that, we have a couple closed sessions, but we can talk about those in a little bit.
Okay, anything further there? Director's reports. Anything? No, moving on. Topics are for the board consideration as in the attachment. And shall we adjourn to closed session?
Yep. Give us a few minutes so that we can get the VCG thing disconnected.